Thank you.
Man.
All right.
Oh,
If I can have everyone's attention, we are now joined by Carl Edwards, driver of the number 19 Aris Toyota. Feels a little weird to say that. How does it feel to hear that for the first time here at Daytona? Who actually finished 7th today in the qualifying run here at Daytona for next Sunday's 57th annual Daytona 500. While we only locked in 2 spots for qualifying here, it will line you up in a good position for Thursday's duels here at Daytona. Just talk a little bit about being in a new car, new number, new team, basically new everything. But coming into Daytona, a little nervous, I know, with no points. So you had a good run today. Talk a little bit about that.
A little nervous, to say the least. We we had not really talked about it much publicly, but there were a lot of meetings and a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of anxiety over how, the fact that we could possibly miss the Daytona 500, and that was, I think we've had 4 or 5 meetings trying to come up with a strategy for qualifying, and so to have the 3rd fastest time of the day, I believe we are locked into the show, which is huge, to say the least. With Aris coming on board in such a huge way, everybody putting this 4th team together, Stanley, it was going to be really tough to explain to them if we had trouble in the qualifier. So now we can go out and have some fun, be aggressive, and try to start up front.
Okay, we'll take questions for Carl. We'll take first with Jenna, then Pete.
Jennifer, AP. Carl, congratulations. I know that you had a lot of stress, as you said. What was your plan? What did you guys decide at JGR, and how did you make this work in your favor?
We had a lot of plans, and none of them really, it didn't go according to plan. When that first group took off and put such fast times up, then it kind of threw any sort of advantage the second group had out of the window. So we went out in that second group. Unfortunately, everything worked out, and we put up that fast time. But that's really the key for us. Wasn't the starting position today. It was getting that fast time, and it really wasn't. It wasn't because we came up with some genius plan. Jeff Gordon and those guys got the pole because they timed rolling off the pit road better than us. They took a bigger gamble, so you can give them credit for that. But for our fast lap time, it's just pure chance.
Okay, we'll take our next question from Pete, then go to Kelly.
Pete Pistone, MRN.com and SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. You're happy, understandably so. A lot of your colleagues were not. Can you maybe give some perspective of kind of what went on out there?
Well, I'm very happy with the result. The process and everything was extremely stressful. If it is better for the show, if it's better for the fans, then it's definitely good for all of us. But this is a heck of a way to qualify for the biggest race of the year. Especially for folks that are in our position, because there's so much chance for a problem or something keeping you out of the race or putting you in a bad position. So, I don't know. I guess it remains to be seen what the best way to do this is, but this is definitely one way.
Okay, we'll take our next question, Kelly.
Kelly Crandall from PopularSpeed.com. Carl, to your left. When the decision was made at Gibbs that you're coming down here with no points and you have to qualify in speed, how much has that been on your mind? What was it like for you behind the scenes, internally? What's been going through your mind?
I don't know if it's a decision as much as a realization that we're coming down here. And with this qualifying format, if you look at how everything came together, I think the realization or the understanding that this is how we were going to qualify, that's the point at which we all went, whoa, this could go extremely bad. So that from then on, it's been just a total mess of anxiety trying to figure out, how it's a bunch of if-thens. If we would have qualified poorly or had a wreck today, then the qualifying race would have been much different. If there was weather, what do we do? There were so many variables. It was, this is all put to rest now, but man, that was not fun to think about.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take Matt. Didn't you have a question, Matt? We'll go ahead and take that.
Matt Weaver, PopularSpeed.com. From down here watching the Unlimited last night, it seemed like you really drove a more aggressive race in a plate race environment than we've ever seen you before. Was that a conscious effort to try to set the tone for your career at JGR, or was it just the plate race itself and the Unlimited?
That's a great question. I thought about that. I'd say I was a little more aggressive last night just because I wanted to make sure to get everything I could out of the car, to find the edges of the box, and I still was a little cautious at the beginning, and we avoided a couple of those wrecks. But towards the end, I just want to make sure I gave it everything I could. There's nothing better than starting out fast, and hopefully we can continue to do that.
Okay, we'll go to Lewis, then Nate.
Yes. Lewis Frank Reuters, you used the word anxiety. How much anxiety did you get seeing the wreck in that first knockout session?
Yeah, that wasn't good. I did not like to see that. You don't want to see any wrecks or anything like that ever, especially here. You know, they can be so violent. But yeah, when you see that, especially with everything we have going on, I didn't. I probably would have been better off not seeing that actually. So, I mean, as soon as we ran our fast lap, Darian said, "P3, good lap. Do not wreck the car." You know, so it's like, it's crazy. You know.
Okay, take our next question. Nate, go ahead.
Nate Ryan, NBC Sports. Carl, after the qualifying session at Talladega last fall, there were also some unhappy people, and NASCAR said they're going to take a look at it. Realizing this is somewhat of a matter of opinion, but do you think that they addressed it? Do you think that they changed it for a restrictor plate race? And if you have any thoughts, and Kurt Busch suggested maybe doing 4-lap averages. Is there another way that might be better than this way?
What depends on it's better for whom, you know. For the competitors, the best thing is to go out and do single car runs and see who built the best car and who brought the best piece. That's probably the best way for the competitors. But this makes it a little more chaotic. It probably creates some storylines. It definitely, you know, stirs things up, and in some ways it might be more entertaining. So for the fans, this may be the best way. I don't know. It's very hard for me. I have a very subjective viewpoint, and it's just hard for me to say.
Okay, we'll go Chris right here in the middle, and then up to Kenny, and then Dwight.
Chris Knight, CatchFence.com. Carl, if you are locked in on speed, how is your approach for Thursday night stools? Do you take a conservative approach and try not to wreck the car, or do you go after it and try to get a better starting spot for the 500?
Well, that is a big if. I mean, are we certain? We're locked in, right? Is that how, is it? Can anybody do the math on this? Or we are. Okay. So yeah. So since we are locked in, and I want to write and say that as much as possible in case we're not. Then we can. I can be more aggressive because I want to start up front in that 500. So now I can be more aggressive, not worry about getting in a wreck. We'll still be in the show. The problem with racing when you're not locked in is that, I mean, those qualifiers are going to be insane. And if you're not locked in, it's so hard out there. I don't know how to explain it. It's so hard sometimes. You know, there's half of you that's screaming, just go for it, and the other half saying, you know, the other half's a moron. You know, slow down. So it's tough. So now we can just go for it. We've got a really good backup car, so I don't even want to talk about that. Let me go back. Yeah, but we do. Yeah, I'm gonna go for it. Yes.
Okay, we'll go Kenny, then Dwight, then
Not
Ken.
good to start talking about the back.
Yeah, I think you touched on this a little bit a minute ago. But when you say this is a heck of a way to qualify for this race, is that an endorsement?
No, that's a statement of fact. I said this is a way. This is one of the ways to do it.
Okay, Dwight, then Ken in the back.
Dwight, DrumRaceTech.com. Carl, when you made that decision to go to Joe Gibbs, you must have had a lot of expectations. How do those expectations line up as of today?
So far, my expectations, everyone at JGR and Toyota and everyone, they've exceeded my expectations. It's been very good. Now, we haven't raced a lot. I'm sure we'll have rough times just like everyone does, but so far it's been great. I think the buildup of this team, the way that everything was put together, the group of guys that they put on that 19 car, I mean, I could not be happier with it. So I'm having a good time.
Okay, we'll take Ken in the back.
Carl, when you're sitting on pit road with the clock ticking down, how ridiculous does that feel for a driver to sit there when that's going on? Do you feel as silly as we thought you looked doing that? And if you were one of the handful of fans who paid $20 to come out here today, do you think you got your money's worth?
Well, I'm not going to answer that and assume that I agree. You know, I don't want you to assume I agree with you. Well, no, I'm just saying I don't know what it looks like to the fans. That's for the fans to say. I know for me, that's a heck of a lot more stressful. The word silly did not come to mind with everything we had on the line. I mean, it was really stressful sitting there watching the clock tick, knowing that we had to make it around and get in the right line and do all this stuff correctly. It's a strategy, just like anything else. There's this style of racing. We have to all remember this style of racing is not. It's not racing in the sense that everyone thinks of racing. This is a whole different paradigm here with the restrictor plates, with all the strategies in qualifying, with the way things shake out on the racetrack, avoiding wrecks, being in the right line. I mean, this is its own animal. So, you know, it just is what it is.
Is there anything like at a spur of the moment now that you could think of that might be a better way of doing this?
Well, I think if we were probably starting with a blank sheet, we'd probably say, that it. Well, I'm not. Here's the deal. I don't decide how we're going to qualify. I get in the race car and go do the best I can under the rules we have, and I think everyone in here would have an opinion on what would be the best way to do it.
Okay, we'll take our next question up front from Tom.
I'm sure you'll write a couple of ideas.
Hi, Carl.
You don't seem too shy with your opinion.
Hi, Carl. Tom
Yes,
Jensen, FoxSports.com. Is it safe to say that the Gibbs and Hendrick cars are the class of the field? Or is there anybody out there that you're looking at is really, really fast?
I'd say that that 78 car last night was extremely fast. That one, I think those guys, they've got something going there. That car was very, very good. Looked like the Penske cars were really good. This place is, the performance here is a measure of your performance at a restrictor plate racetrack, and this is so different than Atlanta or Vegas or any of the places we'll go to next. That it's really its own animal, and you have to. I personally compartmentalize this race and separate it from the rest of them. It's just so much different.
Okay, we'll take Greg and then Mike.
Hey, I've seen you somewhere before. Greg Engel, Examiner.com. How much, the more because you had very limited on-track time with you and Darian prior to this week, the test at Charlotte. You had a great outing last night. You had a really good outing today. How much do you look at Thursday now as you have to balance, are you having to balance between surviving or looking at it as an opportunity for more experience, more motivation, and more of the bonding that you need to be successful?
Well, to me, my racing is my livelihood. It's what I do. I have to go perform, and with all these new things, honestly, it's been very, very stressful and a little bit scary at times with all the new things. And so I feel like every time I'm in the car, I feel a little more comfortable. Just the procedure for starting the car and the procedure for cooling the engine, the belts, the seat, everything's different. The way Darian talks on the radio. I mean, last night, he said, I was getting ready to leave we did a pit stop, and he said, dig, dig, dig. And I thought, who's he talking to? Because I'm used to hearing go, go, go. So I sat there like an idiot. And, those kind of things are, they keep me awake at night. So every time I can get in the car, it's better. So I'll balance those things. I'll learn, and we'll be a little aggressive.
Okay, we'll take our next question up front. Mike.
Mike Neff from FrontStretch.com. Carl, just curious, you talk about as the clock's winding down and worrying about getting around to the start-finish line in time to put a lap down. Did you guys actually test that during practice and sit at the end of pit lane and then launch and get around and see how long it actually took?
Yeah, so the final time when we went out, the final 12 guys, all of us knew the time we thought it would take to get around and take the green. And we also knew the time it would take to get a second lap or a third lap. So once the third lap time had passed, like 2.5 minutes, everybody thought, okay, so now we're going to run 2 laps. So we got to 2 minutes. Well, now, since nobody went, now it's just, can we get around and make 1 lap? And that cutoff time was right at 1 minute. I waited till about 57 seconds and just, did a lot of praying. And then the guys behind me, I thought there was no way they could make it, Jeff and those guys, but they just were willing to risk more. And they crossed the finish line, literally right when the clock was going off. But that is harder to do than it sounds. And you have to take into account the draft and all those things that could pick you up a second or two. They just gambled bigger and they won.
Okay, final 2 questions. Bruce there in the middle, then Stan up front.
Bruce Martin, NationalSpeedsportNews.com and Speed Sport Magazine. Carl, is this the start of the Carl Edwards Rejuvenation Tour?
Yeah, I'm going to get T-shirts made to say that. No, I think so. It's fun. I've had more fun this week. I did a thing with Darrell Waltrip this morning. We talked about it. I am having fun. It's a new challenge. I feel like I'm starting over. Jack Roush brought me down here 12 years ago or something for my first truck race. I had all the anxiety and the nerves, and I feel that way right now. So this is fun for me, and I hope the result is good. But for now, I'm really enjoying the process.
Okay, our final question, Stan.
Stan Creekmore with CompetitionPlus.com. Carl, now that you've got a guarantee that you're going to be in the Daytona 500, how much does that turn Thursday's duel somewhat into a test session? because you haven't been able to test all winter.
Right. So the pressure will be off. There are some things like the communication between Darian and I that I think we can work on. The pit stops are going to be important. Not only is it a new pit crew to me, but it's a new group working together. We talked a little bit about that last night. We didn't get much opportunity to mess around with pit stops. And as you guys know, that last pit stop can be huge in the Daytona 500. So it will give us a chance with less pressure to work on all of those things. And as I sit here and think about all of it, it makes me a little more stressed out because there are a lot of things we have to cover, but that's a good time to do it.
Carl, thank you for your time. Congratulations on a great run today.
All right,
Good luck
guys. Thanks a lot.
Thursday and Sunday.
All right.
Second place starter in next Sunday's 57th annual Daytona 500, Jimmy Johnson, driver of the number 48 Lowe's Chevrolet. This is Jimmy's fourth career front row starting spot for the Daytona 500. And obviously he'll be starting up front alongside Hendrick Motorsports teammate Jeff Gordon. This is the fourth front row sweep for Hendrick Motorsports in the Daytona 500 as well. The other three were 2011, 2010, and 1989. So, Jimmy, congratulations on a front row starting spot. Just tell us maybe how important it is to share that front row with your teammate and know that you're locked in for next week already.
Yeah, it's nice to be locked in on Thursday with the duels. You don't have to take any big risks or chances, so it's nice to know that we've got a great starting spot for the 500. So we'll enjoy the week, and more so on an emotional level. This sends a big thank you back to all of our folks at Hendrick Motorsports and all the different shops and departments. They've been working so hard to get our cars ready for the season and to get a front row sweep in all four Hendrick cars in that final qualifying session, I think says a lot. And the only way the drivers can really thank everybody for their hard work is to go out there and stand on it. And we did that today and did a nice job working the qualifying sessions as we needed to advance and knock down that front row.
We'll open up for questions. We'll go to Tom, and then we'll come to Reed. Tom Jensen behind you.
Hey, Jimmy, Tom Jensen, FoxSports.com. 4 Hendrick Chevys and 4 Gibbs Toyotas in the top 8. Is that who it's going to be on Sunday?
It's so hard to predict. I mean, we saw last night with all the chaos. I feel like amongst those 8 cars, you have 8 really good drivers with the draft. And I think our 8 cars over the last few years maybe have been just a little step ahead of the competition. So traditional thinking, yes, and we just don't have a clue. And I think last night's the best evidence to support that. Although one of those 8 did win that race, so.
Go to Reed, then Kenny, then Mike.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire Service. When you realized that you'd gotten the last position there on the, coming off pit road, did you think you were in the catbird seat at that point? And conversely, did you think you might have waited too long?
Man, we had some cues in timing marks what we thought we needed to leave pit road at, and that time came and went. And I really felt like no one was going to get back in time. And I would be on pole position, 11 would be next to us. And then as we were making the lap, we got up to speed and through the gears and covered so much territory that as they're giving me my cues, I'm like, I think most are going to make it. Now I'm in a position where I'm not going to make it. But we just kind of, we knew what the risks were, and in order to get the pole, you've got to take a big chance, and that can be front row or 12th, but 12th at a plate track isn't the end of the world. So we were willing to take that risk and to try to gamble to be there. And we made it back around far faster than we thought we could. Because I thought I was out. I thought I was going to miss the cutoff on the time. But if everybody waited long enough, it was very easy for me to wait the majority of that time because I thought they were going to run the clock down and no one was going to get a timed lap. So at one point I'm sitting there thinking, sweet, let's just all wait each other out. I'm going to end up with a pole and no third attempt, or third session.
Kenny?
We've heard a lot of drivers talk about how hard the teams work to prepare Daytona 500 cars and everything they do to massage them and all the engine work, and then what a waste it is to come here now and go through this format. And we didn't just hear about it today from people that were angry.
Sure.
We heard about it Thursday when people were talking about what they could expect. Do you feel it is any more? Do you feel any better about the way the format is here, or would you rather it all be about the one car, the one shot, as opposed to somebody else controlling your destiny?
Man, it's tough because I think everybody's trying to keep an open mind on what's best for the sport, what creates the most interest. I guess we should maybe look at viewership numbers and attendance numbers to see if this format supports the risk that the teams are taking and drivers are taking in the cars. Just on a side note, they're probably happy there wasn't any testing, because if we had 3 more days of single car testing invested in the cars, they'd really be mad. The guys that crashed today. We say all that and we're frustrated about today, but we've got a race on Thursday, and that doesn't seem to bother people. Maybe it's just because it's always been there. So trying to think about the car owners and the expenses that are into all of this. I mean, that Thursday race could be, frowned upon in a certain situation. I don't know what the right thing is. Fortunately, I drive for a big team, well-funded team, and I would be bummed if I lost my 500 car, but we've got some good backups, so maybe I don't have the best point of view on it.
Okay, we'll go Mike, Bruce, Jenna, Bob.
I'm trying to do what's right for the sport, That's why I keep referring back to stats, and I'm not trying to take a soft way out, but, at some point in time, in order to grow the sport, somebody's got to be unhappy, And I don't know where that falls, and hopefully we can look at facts and stats to say, yes, this is better, and it's worth the 5 cars we lost. If it didn't move the needle, then we should probably rethink things, and the 5 cars we lost wasn't worth it.
Jimmy, I know that you probably, right over here, Mike Vega, Boston Globe, I'm sure you probably wanted to sit on the pole there, and we're hoping that the clock would run out on everybody with you sitting on pit road. But how meaningful is it for you to be starting alongside Jeff in his last go-round here at Daytona, and how fitting is it that he's going to be leading the field to green on that day?
I guess it's so fresh with him in this position in his final year that it didn't go through my mind that way. It was, stoked for it to be a Hendrick front row. Sure, I wish that I was a few hundreds faster and got the pole, but I haven't thought of it. I've been asked this question a few times. I just haven't thought of it in that light. I guess maybe I should, and as the year goes on, it will become more of that. But yeah, to start next to him, his final Daytona 500 is very cool, and depending on how the results turn out, it could be a whole bigger storyline yet. So. But again, just to tie it back to the team, though, there's so much time and effort goes into all this. So to have the front row locked down, I don't know where Mr. H is, but I know he's smiling pretty big.
Okay, we'll go Bruce, Jenna, Don.
Bruce Martin, National Speed Sport News. Some of the drivers have said under the single lap format, it was really showcasing what the team and the engineers and the car could do. Today put the driver into the equation with the pole. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, we definitely have to drive the cars today, and it's maybe borderline a chess game too, because you're playing the clock. You definitely don't want to be the first car off pit road. It's kind of a waiting game. Who's getting impatient? Who can afford to wait? Like the way we were positioned, really through all 3 segments, we knew the 48 was in the 500, so we're playing with house money the whole race or the whole session. And as we got to the 3rd one, I mean, it was 1st or 12th. It didn't matter. So our point of view might be a little bit different on all of that. But, we have the single car runs, and we get all these sayings it's boring. It's like watching paint dry, but you don't tear up cars. So now we have something that's a little more exciting, and we tear up some cars, and that doesn't seem to be the popular way to go about it. So I don't know what the solution is.
Go Jenna, Don, then Bob.
Jennifer, AP. Jimmy, it seems like most of the drivers who didn't make it into the final round did not like this today. We heard a lot of that at Talladega as well. Ultimately, don't you guys as drivers control how that's going to go? I don't necessarily mean the wreck, but who goes when. I mean, that first group, everybody was dodging around pit road. Isn't that all in your hands, and you guys can control how this plays out?
No, without a doubt. It really is on us. The thing that makes it, I guess maybe most aren't thinking about, is restrictor plate racing is just so different. And if this was at Atlanta next week, you wouldn't have the same dynamic and needing to count on the draft, and it's a non-issue. But the fact this is a restrictor plate track and you have to work with others creates all this frustration. But it really is in our hands. I mean, we're the ones steering and standing on the throttle.
Don?
Jimmy, Don Coble. Can you understand how some people think this would be confusing, since you and Jeff were the 11th and 12th cars in line and you were the two fastest, and the first car in line was the slowest? It just kind of, does it seem like it goes against everything that is supposed to make sense in racing?
Man, I think if in the dictionary, I'm pretty sure in the dictionary, restrictor plate racing equals what you just asked. I mean, it's just so backwards, you know? I mean, it's just plate racing, and it's physics. And I think our diehard fans get it for sure. I mean, they understand the draft, and went on a big bike ride with some folks that are some pro cyclists and triathletes the other day, and they came here and the draft exists in their world, and they got it. They're like, oh, no way. Okay, so the guy last in line is going to be less energy on the car, and they can go faster. I'm like, yes, you got it. So I hope everybody gets it. I doubt it, but you know, it's just physics. I guess it's hard to explain all that sometimes.
Bob?
Bob Hockris, ESPN. Is there any part of this that is more fun for a driver than single car qualifying? Because everything we ever heard was like, well, anybody could get in the car and whoever could do it, hammer the gas and
we
go.
We were bitching then and we're bitching now, aren't we?
Well,
must be racing.
I mean, is there any part of the chess game that is enjoyable?
I've had a decent amount of success with it the last 2 or 3 plate tracks, so I feel like I'm understanding how to work it. So I don't have the worst opinion of it. I mean, it is weird, the waiting game. I get it. You know, that part is frustrating, but I don't know how we make entertaining restrictor plate qualifying. Unless they run us through the chicane on the backstretch or something, I don't know how we make it entertaining.
Come up to Lewis.
Sure.
Louis Frank of Reuters. Taking out the random nature, though, of a wreck in a restrictor plate racing, which is more challenging to you as a driver, just a single car qualifying or going out in these packs?
These packs are definitely more challenging. On a single car, you just get it through the gearbox and follow the yellow line, and the speeds are slow enough that the car's well under its grip level and the limits of the vehicle. Once you get 40 cars around you, low air, speed goes up 20 miles an hour, then the car is tough to drive. That's what we have with this group qualifying session. You're actually in there driving the car, and there is some luck involved in where you are in line and why the car creates a faster time, but there is much more driving required in the group qualifying session.
Chris?
Yep.
Chris Knight, catchfans.com. Jimmy, Carl was in here a few minutes ago and said the duels on Thursday will be insane. Is he right?
I don't think so. I've expected stuff to go haywire in the duels every time, and I don't know if I've seen a crazy duel yet. Fact of the matter, there's 6 cars that need to be crazy, and maybe it's 4 and 2 or 3 and 3 in a race, how it works out. Those are the only ones that really have to worry about. So the bulk of the group just plays it smart. You know, we don't want to lose our car. There's no need. I mean, sure, you might start a little farther forward, but I think they will be tame, personally.
Okay, we'll go Brant and then up here in the front.
Brant James, USA Today Sports. Is it ever disconcerting that the perceived entertainment value of your sport seems to go so far in determining the rules of competition for you?
At times, it seems like it's in question for sure. You know, I feel like we got to try though, and you know, we've had a lot of change over the years. If you look at the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a ton of change. So as long as the needle's going in the right way, I guess we're doing it right. But you know, there certainly are plenty of chuckles about that.
Thank you.
And we'll wrap it up here in the front.
Nick Bromberg, Yahoo Sports. You mentioned the clock running down at the end. Is there anything in this type of format against like a driver code that prevent you or somebody in your position from going up to the front, simply stopping and not letting anyone else? You didn't help, obviously, but not letting anybody else around you to get that lap in the last session without the time expiring?
There's only so much you can do to block, and NASCAR made it known that if you were doing any of that, they'd penalize you. So, and again, you don't want to get spun out and run into or damage your car. So I don't think you could really block all that effectively. I mean, you might hold someone up for a beat, but it wouldn't be too long. And then, Brant, one thing I was just thinking about, just kind of pull it back a second. We were in Talladega, and qualifying, we all felt like would be based on a practice session results. It was a couple years ago before group qualifying. If I remember right, everybody loved that practice session and how we had to race for our lap time. And then that's the stuff that NASCAR heard, and then group qualifying came into play. So after a bunch of positive input through a practice session led to a rule, and then now we're having second thoughts. So I don't know how we keep everybody happy. It's just a tough balance.
Okay, Jimmy, thanks for joining us. Congratulations, and best of luck for the next week.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're joined now by our Coors Light pole winner for the 57th annual Daytona 500, Jeff Gordon, driver of the number 24 Drive to End Hunger Chevrolet. This Jeff's speed was 201.293 miles per hour. He's the first pole winner to eclipse 200 miles per hour since 1987. This is his 78th pole in 762 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series starts. His first pole and first top 10 start in 2015, obviously, and his fourth pole in 45 races here at Daytona International Speedway. So, Jeff, congratulations. Obviously, a big pole position for you here for obvious reasons. Just tell us your thoughts, please.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this is definitely huge. For many reasons. This is a one I've been stressing about for a while. This format is crazy and chaotic, and it can be extremely rewarding when you have a day like we had, and to be able to bring that kind of group effort together. In the past, this has been one of the easiest days I've had all year long. You just go out there and hold it wide open and run a couple laps, and it's all about the team and the car and the preparations they put into it. All that hard work still goes into this effort, but I play a bigger role, and the spotter plays a bigger role, and there's just so much more strategy and trying to play this chess match and the time game, that the weight game. It just becomes really intense. So. Yeah, this feels good for that reason alone. Then you add that it's the Daytona 500, the benefits that come along with that, as well as it just being the Daytona 500, and then of course all the emotion of the announcement I made to start this season. Knowing this is my last Daytona 500, this is a very special day.
Thanks, Jeff. We'll open up for questions. Start up here with Lee, then Bob, Stan, and Lewis.
Lee Spencer, Motorsport.com. Was part of your trepidation stemming from what almost happened at Talladega in the fall?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing we really learned from Talladega is that round one, your goal is just to make it in the top 24. And the way I was approaching it, the way I waited as long as I did, that's what you should be doing for round three. And so, that's what made it so frustrating, for Alan, and why I heard about it for a while after that was, man, all we need to do is make it in the top 24. We could just rolled out there in the middle of the pack and probably done that. So, you learn from your mistakes. And I felt prior to Talladega, and that was the first time we had the 5-minute clock. Prior to that, I felt like I had this format down fairly well. I mean, we had good results and success. So that was definitely a lot of the stress. is wanting to do it right. And then, you know, talking to our teammates, I mean, we had a meeting this morning and we're all over the place on what the right strategy is and how we want to do it. Can we work together, you know, and should we work together? Is it better to get together, not get together? Who's wanting to get on to that? And then, you know, 30 seconds before you're getting ready to go, it all goes out the window and changes because what happened in round one and what's happening when you back off pit road. So, I mean, there's just so much, you know, going on in your mind, and it's literally like playing chess at 200 miles per hour. It's pretty crazy.
Okay, we'll go Bob, then Stan, Lewis, then Jenna.
Bob Hocker, ESPN. I guess my question is, why were you so stressed? So you have enough owner points to get in. A lot of people say it doesn't matter where you start the 500, and it doesn't appear that this type of qualifying really says, well, who has, you know, the best car.
Yeah, well, I understand where you're coming from, but when you saw two cars crash in the first round, that gives me enough to be stressed about right there. I mean, it's not you know out of the question that can happen at any time. I mean, you're slicing through, you know, some cars that maybe are by themselves that aren't up to speed or a slower car, and you're trying to draft off of them. You got to train the cars. In the first round, I thought that I was going to miss it because we came up on a car. I was pushing Matt, I believe, and I didn't see the run that was coming behind me. Kyle was pushing, which I didn't know you could push. That was new to me. That Kyle was pushing Vickers, and they went shooting by me on the inside. And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? So it's wild and it's intense. I mean, it's not just, you know, what's on the line trying to win the pole for the Daytona 500. I mean, to me, every time I'm on the racetrack, you know, I want to win. But I also don't want to embarrass myself and not make it past round one. I mean, we're Hendrick Motorsports. We're the 24 team. You know, we have high expectations. So that in itself is somewhat stressful. But then once you make it past round one, your goal is to make it to round three after that. So, you know, that's where it all comes to me is you're trying not to wreck and tear up your car, and you're trying to go faster than the other guys to make it, you know, there. And then once you make it in that final round, you know, it's either pole or nothing. And I mean, we were sitting there fourth after the second round. Jimmy was first, so Jimmy was fine if nobody rolled off pit road. And I was actually somewhat okay with that. Fourth still was pretty good. You know, so when they were waiting, we're just sitting there going, okay, we'll just wait with them. You know, so we were in a good position where if everybody missed the clock, or even if like 4 or 5 of them made it, you know, then it wasn't the end of the world. But once they all started to roll, then obviously, you know, we were pretty happy to. I thought halfway through the lap I was going to miss the line, the clock at the line, but you know, they were counting it down coming off turn 4, and I was like, okay, I think we're good here. I think we're going to make it. And once we made it, I thought we're in a really good position here to get the pole, or at least be maybe second. I thought Jimmy was probably going to get it.
Okay, we'll go Stan, Lewis, Jenna, and Don.
Stan Creekmore with Competition Plus. So you've kind of answered this already, but measure it again, if you will. How confident were you when the session started that you could take the pole, and how soon after taking the flag saying qualifying was over did you know you had the pole?
Well, I was confident my car was fast enough. It was just really about jockeying for position, and I felt like, you know, if I, like that first round we took off, and Matt had a little bit of a gap in front of me, and then I was behind him, and there's some cars behind me, and then another group back there and stuff. And at one point I was sitting there going, uh-oh, I'm too far behind him, you know, and I was sort of a sitting duck, and I thought, oh man, this is not going to work. Then I felt the RPMs come up, and we started getting a tow. And I was like, oh, we're good. And then Vickers went by me on the inside and pulled me back and left me outside. I was like, oh no. But then I was able to tuck back in behind Edwards and complete the lap. And actually, you know, that second lap wasn't bad, and the third lap was a tiny bit better. So, you know, I can't say I was super confident because you just don't know how it's all going to work out. Round 2, I thought, went pretty smooth. I think I got behind the 11, and I felt like we were in a pretty good position there. The cars were a little further back behind us, but there was an intense moment. We ran, I think, our second or third lap. And I actually saw the RPMs creep up even more as we went through 1 and 2, and I thought, oh, this is going to be an even better lap. And Alan's on the radio saying, we're good, But I saw we were going faster, and he's like, don't let them get a tow from behind you. And I felt like they were far enough back that we were good enough. We had gotten a tow off the cars in front of us. And then as we got to 3, Danny started waving because they were all checking up, and it was just chaos. They were all over the place. And that's one thing I think they need to work on this format. That's something that needs to be improved. I don't know exactly what happened with Boyer. I saw where he dove to the inside and they came together. You can't block in this format. That's just uncalled for. But when you wave off, there's got to be a better way to wave off, and I don't know if it's all cars have to go high, all cars have to go low, but all the cars have to go in one place. You can't have them 3 and 4 wide where cars are coming through there doing 20 miles per hour, faster than the cars are in. That's something that we need to do better at. And by communicating with NASCAR and the other drivers, I think we can do that. But so the only thing in the last run when we rolled off there, and I was in the position I was in, behind the 11, the 20, and he had the 18 in front of him. I had Jimmy behind me. At that moment, I thought, if we cross the line and make it, I felt like I had a 50-50 chance. I thought Jimmy had the best chance, and I thought I had, equally or almost as good of a chance, maybe not quite as good. And then it just kind of happened to work out. He closed up on me and gave me a little bit of a push. And then those guys got a little bit of a tow, and I felt like I was really good. And now it's by thousandths or hundredths of a second, so you don't know that. But when they said pole, it was very exciting.
Okay, we'll go Lewis, Jenna, Don, and then up here in the front.
To your left here. Louis Frank, Reuters. You said you felt fairly comfortable with the time that you had, but how much does it go against your instincts from sprint car racing to winning races and championships to sit in the car not moving while the clock is counting down?
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not the part of it that I like, but I do like the fact that there's strategy involved. I think that's a pretty cool aspect to it. I mean, of course, all of us wish that when we're driving around any track that you're actually having to drive it, the handling playing a role and how hard you push the car. And that's just not the case here anyway. So, if you compare to what we used to do, which is really boring, this is probably the extreme the other way where it's extremely intense. But it's... when it turns out the way it did for me, then you like it. When it turns out the way it did for Boyer, then you hate it.
Okay, we'll go Jenna, Don, and then wrap it up with a couple here up front.
Jennifer, AP. Jeff, you have been pretty clear you don't want this to be a farewell tour or anything like that, but yet you've just won the pole for the Daytona 500, and you're going to be in the spotlight the whole week. Are you ready for this?
I mean, at this moment, I'm not treating it any different than I would, a pole and a pole for the Daytona 500. I know it's a big deal, and so I mean, to me, I'm approaching it the same way. I mean, my schedule's not changing, other than the little bit of work that I have to do today, when I leave here. Other than that, it's business as usual. I mean, I'm not saying I've been at the top of the limelight and attention in the sport, but I've gotten enough of it over the years to be somewhat adjusted to it. So, and when it's all fun and cool and you got fans saying positive things and other competitors saying positive things, and then it's kind of hard not to enjoy that. So, I mean, so far, I'm just enjoying the ride. I'm finding unique about this, and Alan actually told me this before the season started when I told him, that this was happening, or even after I announced to the team. He's like, I love it because you're going to have a unique mindset that you've probably never had before. And he's right. I felt it last night. I feel it right now. And that's the way I'm looking at it going into these, next couple races here this week is, it's kind of all or nothing for me. I got one last chance. I can take chances. It's not like I want to win the championship. I want points, But right now it's the Daytona 500, and all I want to focus on is win the Daytona 500, and I'm just enjoying the ride, enjoying the moment, and it's cool. I'm way less stressed than I've been in the past. Now that's going to intensify a little bit in the race. That's just me and in my nature, but it's still, there's just something about it where, it's if you don't win, oh well, it's not the end of the world. But boy, if you can win it, what a storybook type of beginning to the season it would be.
Just real quick, is it fitting to you at all that you will lead the field in your final 500?
Well, we got to get through the 150s first. I'm looking forward to talking to the team and Alan about what our approach should be on that. But that's really, I mean, I can't think of anything cooler than to start this season, the Daytona 500, my final Daytona 500, final full season on the pole. So it's going to be pretty important to me to be on that pole when it all starts.
Okay, Jeff, thanks. Congratulations,
yeah, thank
and
you.
Best luck next week.
Appreciate it.
Media availability. We're joined now by Steve O'Donnell, our Chief Racing Development Officer and Executive Vice President. Steve, if you could just touch on the qualifying today, and then we'll open up for questions.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I wanted to make a few comments on the qualifying session today, and I think, as everybody knows, this format was put together by NASCAR, with feedback from the industry, but ultimately to be as exciting as possible. And we used it last year in Daytona for the summer race. We made some adjustments from there going into Talladega. Obviously learned throughout that, and then came into Daytona with some minor adjustments for the Daytona 500 as well. And so if you look at group qualifying as a whole, we felt it worked really well, but certainly there's some challenges on super speedways. And one of the reasons we moved away from single car qualifying is, I think you've heard that from the drivers as well. A lot of things go into it: aero packages, oils, different setups based on one lap, not really based on a race setup. You heard Jeff Gordon and others also talk about putting it back in the driver's hands a little bit more, and those are things that we liked. I can say we certainly don't want to see wrecks of any kind. Not lost on us how much work goes into these cars by the teams, the efforts for our biggest race of the year. And I'd close by saying I believe we've got a really good track record of making adjustments where we need to. So we'll certainly evaluate what took place today. We'll continue to get feedback from the industry, from the drivers, as we did to get to where we were today. And then lastly, we just want to say a big congratulations to Jeff Gordon. His last Daytona 500, and we're excited to see him lead us off in the pole position as we head into next Sunday's race. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions anyone might have.
Okay, we'll start with Nate, and then we'll go to Jenna, and then we'll go to Jim.
Nate Ryan, NBC Sports. Steve, you mentioned that you made some minor adjustments after Talladega last October. Obviously, there were a lot of complaints there. What adjustments did you make, and were there any things that happened today that perhaps were complained about then that you wish you might have addressed and might look at going forward?
It's a good question, Nate. I think when we looked at it, some of the things you saw take place on pit road today, we were hoping to avoid. And then some of the drivers, how they entered the track on a super speedway. We put some rules in place for today's session to avoid incidents, candidly. Blocking, we were going to monitor. We said that we could look at things to disallow times, but that was more on how you entered the track coming up to speed. So some of those were put in place, but I think those are areas we need to continue to look at.
Okay, we'll go to Jenna and Jim, and then Bob.
Jennifer, AP, Steve, it seems like every driver who didn't make it to the final group hated this format pretty vocally. How much input have they had in what you do on super speedways? Do you have a sense of what they want to do?
Another good question. We all share the same vision with the drivers. They want to put on the most exciting race possible. And so we all knew that single car qualifying was a challenge for us. And so there are a lot of different ideas out there. We do believe this is a more exciting feedback. But when you hear from Clint Boyer, Tony Stewart, that's passion. This is the biggest race of the year. They want to make the race, and we understand that. So I think as we look at that, if there are ways we can make adjustments, we will. Not everyone's going to be happy. That's part of this. Cars have always historically gone home from Daytona, and that's tough. We know how big this race is, but yes, we will have continued conversations with them.
We'll go to Jim, and then Bob, and then down here to Mike Neff.
Oh, Dustin
Jim.
Long.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Dustin, then back down to Jim. Sorry.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Steve, Brian has talked about in the past that he's fine with drivers making comments, but don't disparage the product. And certainly some of the comments that came out, I guess, what's NASCAR's stance on the comments of Clint Boyer and Tony Stewart? Will there be a discussion on that? Are they clear, or are they facing any type of penalty for comments on social media or publicly today?
Yeah, I think what Brian has said is you can take us on. You know, we're NASCAR. That's part of our job. And when I look at the comments that Clint made or Tony made, you know, those are based on wanting to see the best racing out there. So, you know, certainly tough to hear, but, you know, those are things we got to have conversations with them and work with those guys to figure out if there's a better way to do it. We will do that. But it's not something that we're going to go find the drivers for today.
Let's go down to Jim, and then over to Bob, and then down here to Mike Neff. So Jim Utter right over here, please.
Jim Utter, Charlotte Observer. I think you kind of touched on this in your answer to Nate, but would you say that most of the problems that you heard from participants today about what transpired were more a result of teams and drivers gaming the system or the format itself?
I think what you saw today was all of the above, Jim. Congratulations, Jeff. Hey, Jeff, can you... Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you. That concludes my remarks. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, man. No, I think it's a good question, Jim. I think it's with any format we put together, even the Daytona 500 as a race, you know, there's strategy that goes into it. I think what you did see today was the driver had more input or more of an impact on what happened in the outcome. But there are things we can learn from that. You know, we don't want to see wrecks. If there's a way to avoid that, you know, a lot of you talk to us about qualifying races, and you know that could be a result of those as well. So we'll take a look at all of those things and see what the best thing we can do is if we need to make adjustments.
Okay, we'll go to Bob, Mike Neff, and then over to Lewis.
Bob Hockris, ESPN. When determining whether to make changes to this format, how much is it driver input and how much of it is fan input?
I'd say it's we look at input from the entire industry, Bob. So you're going to take fan feedback. You're going to talk to the drivers. We're going to talk to the owners. We're going to talk to the crew members. That's a little bit of how we got to where we are today and going away from single car qualifying, taking input from all of those folks we talked about. So it's a balance for us. And ultimately, it's our job to make a decision. Not everyone always agrees with that, but we've got to make that decision at the end of the day.
Over here to Mike Neff, to Lewis, and then we'll go to Tom over there.
Mike Neff from frontstretch.com. Steve, over here to your right.
Oh, sorry.
When the knockout qualifying was announced in 2014, you had it everywhere except at Daytona, and they said it was because of the unique qualifying format here and the prestige involved. What went into the decision to decide to actually implement it for this year, and is there any consideration due to the prestige and the week-long build-up to this race about possibly going back to the old way?
Well, what went into it goes back to what I talked about earlier, was seeing how knockout qualifying worked over the past year. And we saw some terrific results. We saw some of the qualifying sessions, you know, move from cable over to network, fans saying they were really excited about it. We tried some things at super speedways and knew we had to make some adjustments, but you couple that with conversations with a lot of the race teams about how much work and effort went into a single car lap and how that really didn't apply to the race. And if there were ways that we could put that focus on the race car that was going to compete in the 500 versus a 1 or 2 lap qualifying session, that's really what led to it.
Over to Lewis, and then Tom, and then back over to Pete Pistone.
Louis Frank Reuters. My best legalese. My question was asked and answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom's right next to him. Tom, and then Pete, and then over down here to Lee.
Hey, Steve, Tom Jensen, FoxSports.com. Are you in kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for exactly the reason we saw with Jeff walking out? Whoever wins the poll or runs well in the system is going to be happy, and whoever doesn't isn't?
I think there's always going to be those that like it and those that don't. But I'd point back to if you could put this session in place today and you could tweak maybe what happened on pit road and you don't see an incident that happens, maybe there's a different story. So we've got to balance all of those things now as we look at it. Was it more exciting? Were there more people talking about qualifying? Hopefully so. And what does that result in? At the end of the day, we'll talk to Joey Chitwood, we'll talk to the folks at Fox, and we'll balance that with everybody in the garage and make sure that we're doing what's best for the entire sport. We can't just rely on one driver or one owner or the track. We've got to really balance that and see, what's in the best interest of the entire sport.
Okay, we'll go to Pete, down here to Lee, and then to Jeff Gluck. Pete, hold.
Pete Pistone, MRN.com and SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. OD, you mentioned the pit road and sitting there on pit road. That's counterintuitive to auto racing. It seems to me, though, no matter what time you put on that, you're still going to run into they're going to wait to the very last minute. How much of a challenge is that going to be?
Well, I think that's something we'll talk to the industry about. Can you do some things? I've already seen some suggestions on Twitter, suggestions from some of the folks in the room. Could you roll the cars off with a pace car? Could you do some different things? So, I think those conversations need to take place, and if there's a way to avoid, seeing what we did on pit road, we're definitely going to do that.
Down here to Lee, please. And then we'll wrap it up with Jeff Gluck.
LeeSpencerMotorsport.com. After the race on the 20 radio, Jason Radcliffe said there was a few seconds added to the clock in the last minute for the final round of qualifying. Is there any accuracy to that? Because Kenseth said his timing was off, and that was the reply that the crew chief gave the driver. Because everybody had been sitting there on pit road and waiting, kind of playing chicken. And he basically said that time was added to the clock. And, for us novices, I just don't know how that's possible.
I don't either. I looked at the clock and our timing and scoring system, and that last session, everybody made it in the time that we had on the clock. There weren't any adjustments made.
All right, we'll wrap it up with Jeff Gluck.
Jeff Gluck, USA Today. I understand that you still want to get feedback from the industry and evaluate things, but as it stands now, was NASCAR happy with how today's session unfolded?
I think it's a balance, Jeff. I think, Jeff Gordon on the pole, certainly, his last Daytona 500 is great. Seeing the incident that took place is not. And so it's a balance. We've got to take everything kind of in stride. We see new things every day and have to make decisions on that. So overall, I think, we're happy about the excitement of the qualifying session. But we've got to look at, if there's adjustments we can make to continue to improve it, we're going to do that.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate
Thanks, everybody.
it.